always new ideas around. So good morning, moin moin in Hamburg. Thank you for having me. Mic clicker. Well, isn't this wonderful? This photo is taken more than 50 years ago. Actually, I was 1.5 years old when Apollo 8 cycled the moon, and the capsule had a certain twist, so this wonderful image came into view, and then Bowman and Lowell said, well, hand me a camera, let's take this photo, because we knew a little bit about the Earth, but the context with the moon down here, it was actually Christmas 1968 when this photo was taken. It was so wonderful, marvelous, and it changed our perspective on our planet Earth forever. Meanwhile, down there on this little planet, so meanwhile in any park on the world, just need the video, but it doesn't really matter right now. Just think of any video taken nowadays.
I watched the video, so.
In any park on this world, in any city, we are surrounded by technology. That's the whole point. So we talk to our friends, we take photos, it's clicking all the way around, we are listening to streaming music. So technology is really something that's all around us, and we don't even notice it anymore. So it's really average, it's ubiquitous, it's normal state of affairs right now. So 50 years before, when the photo was taken, it was also the first date when the whole Earth Catalogue came out, and by chance, I have it here. The whole Earth Catalogue, this is before the internet, before Amazon, before Google. Access to tools, it says. Access to tools. You really had this catalog coming out year after year where you can look up certain stuff when you're interested about this blue thing, this planet. And for example, an instance table of contents. Very strange over here. Here we go. We have the contents page separated in sections like understanding the whole system, land use, craft, politics, communication, and some items just as example, history, future, civilization, firewood, building design, architecture, house design, psychological, self-care, alcoholism, dying, and so on. So lots of topics: theater, museum, art, video. And this is why I went to this catalog, because the topic of today, you might wonder, is preserve. So I looked up what's preserve, and we have preserving food. That's why the marmalade is there with the beverages of this morning. So how to preserve fresh fruits? You preserve them by putting them in a can and cooking them first, and then putting them in a can, so you can taste delicious marmalade whenever you like. So this is one notion of preserve. The page on preserve actually is how to preserve food. So you're familiar with all this. Put them in cans, put salt in this. You can have all other interesting stuff to make a living on this planet, because, well, there are not fresh fruits all the time. So you have to deal with preserving our food. There are several other topics. So each page is worth a presentation. I save that for later, probably, if you have more time than 20 minutes. This is the guy who runs the whole Earth Catalogue. It started, as said, in 1968. Stuart Brand, and it ran, I don't know, well, in the 90s, early 90s, I think, was the last edition of the whole Earth Catalogue, because it's not necessary in that form anymore. Stuart Brand. Footnote, recommendation, the Long Now Foundation, with very interesting talks that are quite long and deep, is done by Stuart Brand and his gang. Stuart Brand was also around when a conference was prepared, again, in 1968, the Fall Joint Computer Conference, and this is Stuart Brand operating the camera. Leading to this event in the Grand Hall in San Francisco, where the latest so-called Mother of All Demos by Doug Engelbart took place, where lots of the communication tools that we are using today and the computing tools were introduced the first time to the public. Fingers crossed that the movie is playing right now. Yes.
If in your office you as an intellectual worker were supplied with a computer display backed up by a computer that was alive for you all day and was instantly responsive, instantly responsive to every action you had, how much value could you derive from that? Well, this basically characterizes what we've been pursuing for many years in what we call the Augmented Human Intellect Research Center at Stanford Research Institute.
It's a 1-hour presentation online, of course, in YouTube nowadays. So if you have a special interest in this, it's really worth looking. Lots of stuff, what's, as I said, common today was introduced with this presentation. It was really a revelation for the audience over there, because stuff like interactive working on a computer was not really common those days. We had computers that filled rooms, and you had punch cards handing them over to the operator, and the other day you see that this semicolon was missing and that stuff. So really being online with a computer at the same time was something that was really invented those days. We have a light gun over here. The first computer mouse looked quite clunky, but it was really wonderful and presented over there in this presentation. Some yoga workstations. Computing actually as a supporting tool for groups, top right. You had shared screens, video inside the computer screen, and of course you had some guys trying to make some new experiences like this guy. And over here, once again, the photo from the whole Earth from the Catalogue. Bill Braxton, John McCarthy, by the way. This is Bill Braxton to the left. John McCarthy, who invented time sharing, is hanging upside down on his office door. So what's happened since then? We started with the Catalogue. Again, think YouTube, do it yourself, Amazon, Wikipedia collected in this one volume. This is the state of the internet, then called ARPANET in 1969. We have the Doug Engelbart laboratory at Stanford Research Institute over here. We have UCLA, Los Angeles, we have Santa Barbara, and we have Utah. So the entire network as we know it today, spanning ubiquity around the entire world, was then made out of 4 nodes. And today it's even hard to keep track, so there's some challenging tasks to have a computer visualization of what's going on. And this is just interesting. Send the links out and after that from the Internet Archive, just alone a visualization, what's stored there in the Internet Archive, location-based and so on. So you have these images in your mind already that there's a new infosphere spanning around our globe. And this started all 50 years ago. This guy is Alan Kay, who especially worked at Xerox PARC and who envisioned the Dyna book and the personal computing as such for kids and adults. So if you look up his original papers from end 60s and early 70s, personal dynamic media for creative thought, we're still working on this one. You can really see some mock-ups, wood and glass and paper, how tablets should look like. And they really resemble what we have today in terms of the form factor with the tablets. You have a glass, you have touch interface, you have a stylus. But if you ask him, and I actually did, he's quite disappointed about the current situation because the hardware, the gear, the power, the processors, clock speed is 100 and 1,000 times more than what he envisioned in the early 70s, but the concepts still lag behind. So if you have your smart devices, they're called smart devices, so think about it, what's smart about them, how to get something into these devices apart from watching something and liking something and having a photo and sharing it, but really doing some concept work, some artistic work, some communication work. I mean, not just work in the sense of earning money, but really expressing your thoughts as an artist, as a co-worker, as a friend with your community. It boils down to chat systems right now, and sharing cat videos. Okay, there's a little more, but really the computing power in the tablet, in the sense of a computer, of simulations, of understanding the world, it's really short. And I really prefer an easel or a whiteboard much over the interactive qualities with the screens what we have right now. So what's wrong with the information technology and with the web in specific? He says it's a lack of curiosity. We are not curious anymore to push the borders even further of the tools and gears and hardware and software and the concept that we have today. And he says, well, this is due to the kind of pop culture we have. And each pop culture is just interested in the present. It's not interested in the past and not really interested in the future. So that's really the problem. And if everybody's just interested in the present, you don't even rumble on your cage or rock the boat or try to push the envelope, all these wonderful idioms to try something new. And for me, a short track is to look a little bit into the past and see what we have right now is not that what has always been the case. And therefore I get the motivation to think about, well, it doesn't have to stay and keep that way as it is right now. So in a nutshell, that was a summary for this talk. So if everybody has just the current technology around, we come to something like this. This was a BBC Channel 4 movie that came out January this year. It's a fictional documentary about the Brexit campaign, and just taken as an example for all the problems and trouble that might be associated with the social net. A little excerpt from this movie with a meeting that never happened between Zach Messingham from Aggregate IQ, something like Cambridge Analytica, but the other company, and Dominic Cummings, who was the campaign lead for the Leave You campaign. Just a little excerpt of this movie. Somebody's waving sorry to me. That was the movie. I hope you're really impressed. Do you have another chance to get it? I can try to get it from here somehow. Up. Here's a big play button. So what's the problem? Not technically right now, but we depend on the technology. We think it's all around, but the technology is tracking us, and that's the issue. So we have lots of convenience, we have lots of social networks, and we have lots of friends over there. But on the other hand, all these social systems are more anti-social than social to a certain extent. We are tracked to be good and brave customers, to buy all these products that are advertised in the margins of the websites. And we hardly even notice it, but on the other hand, this is the price we pay without really thinking about for using this technology for free. There is no free service. There is no free service until you pay on the one side, or you get it for free, but then you pay with your eyeballs, so to speak. So you pay with your attention, you get distracted, you're getting tracked, and even worse, sometimes what this was supposed to be video, forget it, get to the next one.
I'm doing it.
Really? Maybe? No, you don't do it.
I'm trying to do it.
No, forget about it. No, I don't want to have it anymore. Just get me the fish. Yes.
No!
Yes.
You're watching me like this, guys.
2 billion people constantly inputting into the database a dozen times a day, patterns form, behaviors overlap.
So what, it just targets or micro-targets your message, that's all?
Not just all. So what it means is that we can design and distribute thousands of different adverts that vary, depending on who we're sending them to. So your timeline will be slightly different to your friends, your moms, and so on. And our software can test how effective certain ads are on certain people in terms of liking, clicking, sharing, and then learn how to adapt them, to improve them in real time.
In real time?
Mm-hmm. Blanket advertising's dead. We're updating and uploading all the time, by choice, teaching data companies and advertisers exactly who we are and what we want. Data that leads political parties to individual voters with a message that is algorithmically tailored towards them. Look, it was Obama who led the way on this, a liberal. It's not about right versus left, it's about old versus new. This is the new politics, Dom. This is how you will win.
And now the fish, please.
Sorry.
Two.
No, not again.
Got it.
Do we have sound? I don't want to hear. Just want to see if we have sound.
Not just all. So what it means is...
Well, thank you, technology. One of my points, you don't hardly notice all the technology around until it breaks, until you have bad usability or something not working expected. Otherwise, everything is fine because you guys and myself, we did a great job. So to use another quote from Kurt Weidemann on typography, you only notice typography when it stinks. So good typography, nobody notices, nobody cares about typography that's good. I think this is true also for usability and interaction design. So you as a user, or we as users, don't notice the good stuff. We just notice something that breaks, that we just suffered through this situation. In a more philosophical phrase from Marshall McLuhan, I don't know who discovered water, but I'm sure it wasn't a fish. So you have to jump out of the water to see what water actually is, what the properties are. And this is really the problem if you're just a culture, a pop culture, interested in the present and the friends in the evening and the immediate relationships that you have, and not really caring about where you're coming from, then you don't know where you're heading. Coming from. So going back to the original vision, to Doug Engelbart, he started in the early 60s with his endeavor, so it took the first 10 years until to go to this presentation in 68. And he realized the world is so damn complex, and he wanted to do something about it because we have to deal with these complex, urgent problems collectively. So we need communication tools, we need groupware, and all this information technology that we know already to really make use of this and use this technology to enable our collective intelligence and smartness and cleverness to solve these problems. It's mixed feelings about this vision. So on the one hand, you kind of forget why we have this gear. We watch, as I said, cat videos and other stuff that's not really that bringing you personally forward. On the other hand, we have the abilities and the capabilities to connect with each other and share our good motivations to save this planet and environment. So, if we are designing for this global environment, then we are also responsible for what's going on this spaceship that's coming over there. I had a little conversation with Ivan Sutherland the other day, one of the pioneers from the 60s with the sketchpad, and he asked me, Matthias, why are you so keen and interested in these old stuff, these old stories? Is it kind of weird or special interesting or nerdy? Yes, to a certain extent. But as said, if you know where we are coming from, then you get from this momentum the feel and the motivation that things can be changed. It's not Steve Jobs, it's not Bill Gates, or not Zuckerberg who were the pioneers. They were all standing on the shoulders of giants before, and they were standing again on other pioneers before. So it's really a long chain of improvements that made us to this point where we are right now. So. Don't wait for the next pioneer, be it yourself. And as a takeaway, first of all, love this planet, maybe hug a tree to make it more practical, this recommendation. Love the people, even if it's hard. There are a lot of morons and idiots, but this is the crew that we have on this spaceship, and we are all crew on this spaceship in the sense there's no captain who's steering this spaceship. It's all of us who are responsible. And for us as designers in certain areas, in several areas, deliver and create useful and delightful tools and platforms with positive user experience for our users. So thanks for the attention, and sorry for the technical difficulties. Questions right now?
Nee, noch nicht.
I think this is blocked.
Well, you have.
Yeah, to kick them out.
I'll do that afterwards.
So as you know, we are already in June. This was my talk on preserve. The June's topic actually is wonder. So you might wonder what my talk on wonder might have been. You don't get it, but we have the other stuff. So enjoy, please enjoy.
Are you sure you're okay to drive?
What?
I'm just saying, are you sure you're okay to drive? Because this is making me feel a bit uneasy.
My hands are on.
Ready to roll. Ready to run.
I think you should probably do just
And wonder. Thank you so much to Matthias. Do we have any questions from the audience about anything regarding any of these old concepts, any of these interesting concepts, and how we can bring them into the future? Yes.
I was just wondering what your view is on gaming and eSports and the effect that's going to have on society, positive or negative.
In general, I think it's positive because it brings people together. If it's just eSports and people, prejudice speaking, wasting their time, then I don't like it. But it brings people together, it forms community, and maybe the next step after eSports might we have serious games with the same setting, and then come up with new concepts and ideas. And this might be interesting once again in the context of today's presentation. What's on your name tag? What's your oldest item you own?
I have other one.
Oh, you yourself. Different questions. Sorry, a cafe. A cafe is your. What else? What do we have? Okay. Any other questions?
So I think a lot of the concepts you mentioned have been implemented already, just in a bad way. So for example, a lot of the things that Doug Engelbart did, we have now with the internet just not as good, or Alan Kay, we've got the iPad, but it's not as good as his concepts. So I think it's really hard to have, if you have a bad implementation of something already, to change it and make it good is probably harder than going back and building a better thing from scratch, but we can't do that because we can't start over with the internet. So are there any strategies how we can still reach these great visions with the bad implementations we have today? Because it seems really difficult to me.
I think you can use the current infrastructure, hardware, tools, internet, etc., in a way that not fulfills, but goes in the direction of what I've presented. So you can make use of the internet, of the social network in a way that builds up on a pile of your own knowledge, for example. Just choose the platform wisely that you can get out of the system what you put into the system. So if you like something, if you hashtag something, just do a check how you build knowledge, that you structure the world for yourself, and then the mix of these systems is quite okay. It works, but it's really a scattered world. It's not really the best in the sense of the original ideas. And I think there's no switch off and start over again. So this won't happen. Nobody was going to switch off the internet, aside from some countries who are not really democracies on the high end of the checklist. But even then, replacement is not in sight. So use the tools and build the tools and get the subset of tools, build them yourself, share the good know-how of what you're doing with your peers, and then it's quite okay, and it's getting better in your small context, but not in a sense as, well, we have the wonderful knowledge system, distributed, open source, and so on for everybody on this environment. So it's a little bit pessimistic if you talk to Nels, to Alan Kay, even Doug Engelbart, he passed away a couple of years ago, so they were all kind of disillusioned old men, and I don't want to be too pessimistic about this and share their impressions, but it's really hard to say, well, this is the Diner book, and so it's not just enabled for kids. It's designed for kids, that kids can do programs. So the Smalltalk language was created by Alan Kay and colleagues Adele Goldberg in those days. It's possible for school kids to create programs, and if you have all the discussions as today, it's how do we get tablets and internet into the schools, and this is just the hardware, and that's not enough because the concepts are not there today, but we had this concept, so we can retrieve them, the preserved history, and see what's feasible today. Keep the fingers crossed and do it.
Anybody else? I have a question. Do you find that there are any good examples for companies or platforms or internet anything that you seem to feel are in the right direction or innovative in a way that are using these old concepts, or do you find that there's just a lot of noise?
Well, a couple of these big players are founded actually on the on people who worked at Xerox PARC, for example. So you had Adobe on the list of sponsors, and the founders of Adobe were members, working members of Xerox PARC those days. So all this PostScript stuff comes from Xerox, so therefore it's really direct chain from there. If you look nowadays, well, all the mind mapping tools is quite interesting, because you're not bound by the software to certain frames, like in PowerPoint Keynote, for example. So it's not card after card and bullet point after bullet point, but it's more like the free reasoning of thought. And if you have software who supports this note-taking, like you can do with a pencil on a sheet of paper in software, so you can rearrange stuff and hyperlink stuff and all additional stuff that's not possible on paper, and the mixture of both might be interesting. The other thing is, you're probably familiar with Minority Report, which is already, well, 15 years old or so. So all this gesture user interface is coming around, but more important, the entire rooms can be digitally enhanced, enabled. So why not just have a smartphone somehow, shake something and push something on the wall and sticks there, and we can all use this wall and that wall to really have our arguments and discussion in the room. So really a room environment for people working and living there might be quite interesting. Oblong Industries is the company by Mark Underkoffler, who did the technical consulting on Minority Report. So if you check out Oblong Industries, might be really one high on the list to answer your question.
If we had that now, we wouldn't have technical difficulties today. Sorry, y'all. 5 years, 10 years? When is this all going to happen? Eventually.
It's unevenly distributed, so the future is already there. So some people are living it, they don't even notice that they have it already, and some others are really lagging behind and see, well, do we have connectivity and so on. So it's there already. So just go to the interesting spots and pull it out. It's possible with open source software or companies like Oblong, as described.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And before you all leave, let's give Matthias another round of applause. Thank you for